Hello guys, my name is Mark from jazzguitarlessons.net. Improve your jazz guitar playing with a real teacher. Today I want to have this little YouTube lesson on how to add passing tones to your scales. So they're called Bebop Scales, and there's a bit of confusion sometimes around the rules we use to adding a tone. So you have one scale passing tone, sometimes two added passing tones. Some of you might have used or know this great book, David Baker's How to Play Bebop. So I'll talk about a little bit about this, a little bit about the Barry Harris half-step approach, or I think he calls it a half-step method for practicing your scales. And so let's get going with the material. But first, a word from our sponsor. This lesson is brought to you by Bandzoogle. Bandzoogle makes it easy for musicians to create stunning websites within minutes. You can go ahead and check out my personal website. It's marcandreseguin.com, my name, no dash, no space. And this was built in Bandzoogle in about 18 minutes. So it's really easy to sell your music, sell your merch, sell concerts, tickets, and much, much more. They don't take a fee. It's really amazing, and as a jazzguitarlessons.net subscriber, you can get 15% off by using the coupon code JAZZGUITAR. That's 15% off your first year, or you can see the link in the description below. Alright, back to bebop scales. So the concept of adding scale tones is not new. So guys, if you're totally not familiar with this, there's tons of resources on the website. I'll give you an example. If you have a C scale, C7, C Mixolydian, C, D, E, F, G, A, B flat, a bebop scale would be adding a tone before getting to the next C. So ascending would sound like this. And of course descending, that's where you can hear a lot of the bebop licks. That's really where it comes from. Bebop scales make it easy to add, to keep lining up with the bar, basically, because we have a bar of 4/4 and our regular scales have 7 notes. So with 8 notes, with one more note added, you can get a lot more mileage and you can fit within scales without interrupting your flow. So of course this is a little bit of chromaticism. This comes from the good old bebop era, from Charlie Parker, Dizzy, and the likes. And I want to introduce this great book and DVD. I don't make any commission on this. Barry Harris workshop video. It's really hard to put your hands on one of those, especially in Canada, and they're really expensive. Barry Harris is or was the #1 well-known famous teacher for teaching bebop to instruments, all instruments and all levels. It's fantastic. This is 4 DVDs. It's amazing. You put it on, you're like, wow. So Barry, this is my introduction to scale tones, and say, all right, if you want to do this bebop concept, it's not going to work if you start on a different scale tone. If you start from the D note here and you want to go down, so you can't go, because your chord tones will not line up with the bar, basically. So he says if you start on D, you have to go, let's not add a tone. So it's not a bebop scale anymore, so go, right? Or alternatively, if you add 2, they will sort of cancel out. So you can see this here, D, D flat, C, again, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is all well and good, and of course you can see this on the associated page on the website, but personally I found this a little bit cumbersome, because then you have to retain some rules depending on where you are in the scale. So it's a good way to kind of practice guitar and practice scales, I'd say probably especially for piano players, because Barry was a piano player. But to me, retaining a whole bunch of rules is not really ideal. And so don't worry, for dessert I have my, my own method, which you can find on the page, which I've simplified everything, distilled it, I have the tabs, and I've really used fingerings that make sense to really have a sort of chromatic flow in a bebop style. So stay tuned. So that's really my introduction to the bebop scale concept. And then came David Baker, and I had a teacher in Montreal in university who said that David Baker, that's a story. But the story goes like this. David Baker took a year off, a sabbatical, and he went to study with Barry Harris, 1 full year. And I mean, David Baker was probably a postdoctoral candidate or something like that. So not a small guy, like a really known guy in the jazz education world. And he went to Barry. And what I love about this whole thing, how to play bebop, by the way, there's several volumes. If you guys are interested, I love books. So that's volume 2. In short, it's basically a bunch of licks. There's volume 3, which uses more techniques, more advanced techniques to use bebop heads. So you can use your bebop melodies to kind of create your own licks, and that's where you get the language from. But anyways, in volume 1, David Baker goes, you know, we don't need to use all these rules. So he says, if you start your scale on 1, 3, 5, or 7, you don't, you just keep playing the same scale. So I'll give you the gist of it, the rundown quickly here. So far so good. That's from C. Start from the 3rd. Again. From the 5th. And from the 7th. And you can of course do the same thing back down. So this is all well and good, and then he says, of course there's no way around it. David Baker, in How to Play Bebop Volume 1, says, now if you're about not to start on a scale tone, then here are a bunch of solutions. You might do a syncopation, ta-da-ta-da-da-da. You might do an enclosure of some sort, like go, sorry, no sound. Bebop, a circle around the note you're targeting. And basically what he does is, David Baker goes about to create even more complicated rules than was previously done by Barry Harris, but he doesn't call them rules, he just has suggestions for ways to handle not starting on chord tones. So let's put this on hold for a while, and I'll introduce my own method for teaching and personally practicing this stuff, because it was sort of a revelation at that point in my life. I was using what you can find in the 2 pages of the PDF. I was using this day in, day out as my warm-up for scales. So every day I'd pick up the guitar and start with this. We'll assume that everything is taking place over a C chord, so a C7, or a C9, or C13, and that the scale of choice is, of course, C Mixolydian, C7 Mixolydian dominant scale. All right, so I've divided this page into 2 phases. So what I did in phase 1 is I distilled the most important descending scales from the Barry Harris approach, meaning that sometimes there are 2 different rules for the same note, and I only used the one that made sense for guitar and the one that sounded best to my ear first. And so I'm reading this on my computer screen here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there's 7 notes in the scale, so there's 7 total exercises. They're actually parts of scales. And what I did in phase 1 is do my favorite thing, which is adding pickup notes. So every line has a pickup note of 3 notes. So instead of starting the scale 1, 2, 3, 4, we always will do a pickup. So a 1, the 2, a 1, 2, 3, and 1. So there's always 3 notes before the 1, which I find is much more conducive to swinging and to kind of playing into target notes instead of always starting on 1. So that's phase 1, which I'll go through quickly now. And there's phase 2 in the PDF, which you'll realize that actually I reuse some of the Barry Harris stuff. But what kind of got on my nerves with the Barry Harris stuff is the more tones he added, the further down the scale, down the next measure he finished, meaning that some of his scales finish on beat 2 and some of his scales finish on beat 1. I'm a big proponent of targeting, so in phase 2 you have the bebop stuff Barry Harris reused, pickup, and you always land on beat 1, and you'll wind up looking at the little red dot and saying, oh, that's the Barry Harris rule, but actually it's part of the pickup now. So let's study quickly phase 1 and phase 2 to give you a real idea of how it sounds and what to be careful with. Okay, so in phase 1 of your PDF, called the half-step model variations, basically that's a Barry Harris half-step model. That's a mouthful. The first one we have is starting and aiming at C from a chromatic tone, 3 chromatic tones below, sorry. So let's play this together. A 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3. Good. The second example starts on the C note, and we approach a C note like this. So I like this because you fill in chromatic and you start here, so you can actually you have 5 frets, the span of 5 frets to cover with your hand. Really cool little technique. And we go like this. Sorry. So this is a little tongue twister for your finger. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. That's also how I devised the exercises to kind of get you a lot of mileage out of this page, right? And then we aim for the third of the chord, the C chord, so C, E, and E is here, and we're going to approach it like this. Once again, chromatic 5 fret, but the difference with this one is basically we descend the chromatic scale from E all the way down to A. So, and then keep descending down the scale. A 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3. So already right there you can see the chromaticism and the flow coming together. Next one is a little bit trickier, so we're aiming at F, so which is the sus4. And the first few fingerings, people will look at me, look at the tabs and go, this is wrong. It's not. So you go like this. Your F is here. You'll play 2 notes with your index and 2 notes with your second finger. And then you have a little chromatic thing that's one of my pet peeves. It's here. So starting at 12, which is a D note on the 4th string, and all the way down to A again. What I like to do with chromatic scales is play 6 notes per string. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it goes without saying your pinky covers 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and your index covers 2. So it's like your external fingers, this guy and this guy, they both have 2 notes to play. So now for the F one, so that's exercise number 4. 1, 2, 3. Second time a little bit faster. A 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So already there you're like, wow, you're starting to go really high in the scale and get this like when you hear sax players, it's kind of how they think, right? And then let's aim at the G note. So once again we have a little chromatic going in, except this time we go and you have this little slide with the second finger, and then you just go down the scale, your regular C bebop scale. So 1, 2, 3. Love that sound. Next we have the A note, which is our 13, and it goes like this. Whoops, sorry, just on the way up. What's interesting with this one is we have F here on the way up, but F is here on the way down. Be careful with that. Sorry. It's been a while. And now the last one on B flat. So that's our 7th. You have another type of, sorry, my shoulder's bugging me. We have another sort of a tongue twister. So we have, right? Hey, that's right. Muscle memory, guys. It's amazing. So you go, and then there's no more chromatics until you reach that C note to play actually your regular bebop scale. So a 1, 2, 3. And actually in the PDF I stop here. So a tad faster. A 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. There you go. So that's it for phase 1 of the PDF. Just to recap, this is my take on what I think is the most useful use. The most useful use. The most useful stuff from the Barry Harris half-step rule stuff, but you don't have to memorize any rules. You just take this as an exercise, and just the sheer act of playing it and getting it in your ears and fingers will make you derive most of it without having to think too much of what rules am I on, is this melodic minor or this or that. Now let's move on to phase 2. So for phase 2 of this whole exercise video, actually it's a page, as I was saying, that's probably 5 years old. It's a little more condensed, a little more complicated. There's still only 7 exercises, one for each scale note. But within the pickup lines, we have a lot of this. We go up and we go back down. So I'll go through it for each exercise and pointing out the fingerings and stuff. From a little bit of historical standpoint, I'm looking back at this today, and I realized there are fingerings that were my favorite 5 years ago, but maybe today I'd like to use a different fingering. So feel free to experiment, especially with the chromatic parts, because guitar is, I don't want to swear here, but guitar is kind of crazy in terms of how chromatics work and how you have to be careful to make the flow really work. So examine your own fingerings and see what you can extract from this. So for phase 2, the first exercise, the first one for the C note, is exactly the same. There's not much we can do around this. The second one is an interesting one. So we go, and you'll notice the PDF has this little slide on the 7, and you'll be, Mark, why are you starting at 6 and then playing 7 and then down to 6, so targeting the D note? It's kind of strange, right? But the point is this. I'm still thinking of my 6 note per string approach. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it makes sense when you think of it like this. So once again, your index and your pinky each have 2 notes to cover, and the other ones just have 1 note to cover. So a 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3. And you see the result here is we land on C, but we've incorporated the D note, which is the second note of the scale. Now let's move on to the third note of the scale. We have a little bit of an interesting chromatics. Again, we have... And actually you can do this right here. I think I picked a wrong fingering here. So a 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3. Again, 2, 3. This one feels great. Cool. Now on to the fourth one. So we're targeting... We'll be landing on beat 1 on the D note, but actually we're targeting the F as part of the pickup. It goes like this. So I like these little chromatic mix-ups, right? A 1, 2, 3. Again, 2, 3. Good. Now we're aiming on the 5th within our pickup note again, so we get, and this is another one that resembles phase 1 pretty much, where you go, you just cover chromatically from E, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you're playing 8 out of the 12 chromatic notes. You're playing 2/3. 2/3? Yeah, that's right. 2/3. 66.6% of the entire chromatic scale within that scale, but it starts with, ready? A 1, 2, 2, 3. Oh, sorry, my bad. A 1, 2, 2, 3. That's right. Let's do this again. A 1, 2, 3. Great. Now we have the pickup to A, which is the 13th, and it goes like this. And I'm looking at the fingerings I use now. This is a case of you guys have to experiment with this, but I believe what I had in mind was something like this. So once again, our good old 6-note chromatic from D to A, which we have here and here. So the scale goes like this: a 1, 2, 2, 3. One more time: a 1, 2, 3. Good. And for dessert, the line at the bottom of the PDF for phase 2, you get. I really love that sound. That's the sound of bebop. So once again, we get the chromatic from E note to A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and it sounds like this. And the reason I'm doing this is to grab this guy here and then have my free mind to play 4 fingers here, 4 fingers here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. A 1, 2, 3. Ending on E as well. last time. A 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3. And that's it for phase 2. Okay, so that's it for this little half-step lesson. So my goal, of course, was to give you one exercise that fits over 2 pages so you can extract the most out of these more complicated things. And of course you have tabs, you have fingerings, and of course the bebop stuff. If you're interested in digging deeper, highly recommended these two. There's years worth of work in there. So recap, be careful with the fingerings, experiment with your own. We're using 3/8 note pickups to make the lines come to life, and we're aiming to place that C note all the way on beat 1 or on beat 3 at least. And of course there are other lessons on the website, like good bebop scale fingerings for, say, Mixolydian, major, Dorian. You can find this on the YouTube channel or on the website. And there are a lot of other lessons about bebop. I'm a big fan of using what we call bebop modes, in the sense that you can always take any scale you know and add one passing tone or more, and add a part of the chromatic scale within your scale. And there's a course on the website called 25 exercises for better jazz guitar phrasing, something like that. Is that it? Yeah, 25 exercises, you're gonna find it. And it's something that was sort of a discovery for me, that, you know, made my playing took off in that area, on top of the Barry Harris stuff and all these other scale tones. Of course, if you like this video, I'll encourage you to share it with your friends, social media, by email, and please subscribe to this YouTube channel, jazzguitarlessons.net. Improve your jazz guitar playing with a real teacher. I'll see you next time. Take care.